Welcome to the importing and organization module. We're going to start here because getting your images organized from the get-go is very, very important and becomes increasingly more important the more images that you end up having. The goal of this module is to introduce you to the many ways that you're able to organize your images in Lightroom, as well as introduce you to archiving formats like DNG, preview options, hard drive workflow options, and anything else you might need. By the end of this module, you'll have an idea of how to start approaching organizing your images for any occasion, whether that is to find photos to show to a client, whether that is to sort your portfolio out, or even to find images that you want to post on Instagram. Whatever it is, by the end of this module, you'll have an idea on how to approach organizing your files. Okay, so for this module, I'm going to be using a brand new library and we're going to go through the import process from the very beginning. But for the remainder of the course after this module, I'll be using my own personal library so that I can show you guys exactly what I do and give you guys a couple of ideas on how to approach your own libraries as well. So this is what Lightroom looks like when you first boot it up. And it's pretty bare, but what we're going to do is we're going to import some photos first, just so that we can get a better understanding of what the UI looks like when it's filled in. And then we're going to go through each one of the UI elements in order. So the first thing we'll do is press the import button down here on the bottom left. And that'll bring up a new pane here for us to select the images that we want to import. So over here on the left here, I've got some images to import. This particular folder has a whole bunch of different images. It has some drone shots, some portraits, some landscapes, and a couple of other bits and pieces. The way this works is that on the left side, we have the from section, which is where are your images coming from. So you just basically need to select where your images are being imported from. So whether or not that is a SD card, or it is your hard drive, or it's a folder from your computer, wherever you want to select your images from, you do that here. From here, the middle section is the action that you'll be using with those images. And then over to the right here is where the images are going to. So if you are editing your images on a hard drive, for example, then you would definitely want to select your hard drive here. Or if you want to edit your images from your computer, then you can do that here as well. Now coming back to here, this middle section determines what happens to your images when you import them. So you've got four options here. You've got copy as DNG, copy, move, and add. Copy means that you take the images from your source, make a copy, and then push them to the place that you want to import your images to. The move option up here takes the images from your import location and then moves them into your destination. This is important for, say, for example, if you are using SD cards and importing from SD, then that will actually remove all of your SD images and empty out your SD for the next time that you decide to shoot. The add option up here means that you are referencing the files that are in your import location and not moving them, not copying them, and not changing them, but adding their destination into your import location. This means that you can see up here, it says My Catalog. It means that when you want to go and edit these photos, you need to be putting the same media into your computer, or maybe you're editing from your computer, so that's okay as well. But the actual import location needs to be active in order for you then to edit those images. The first option up here, which is copy as DNG, is the same as copy in that it takes the images from the import location and then copies them to the destination. But along the way, it actually converts the image into DNG. So oftentimes you'll get extensions here from your camera that will be something else. It might be a JPEG, it might be a CR2 or a CR3, it might be an ARW like it is here. It might have a whole bunch of different extensions, but in this option, Lightroom actually takes these extensions and converts them to DNG. Some of the reasons why you would want to use DNG in this instance, or have Lightroom convert your images into DNG, is because DNG files can sometimes be smaller. They can be faster, especially when you're using them through Lightroom. They have what's called checksum validation, which means that it checks the file integrity to make sure that the actual image stays true to what it originally was, so that you can make sure that when you're keeping your images for a very, very long time, that all of the information is in the image and hasn't been degraded over time. Also, there's more compatibility for the DNG format as well, whereas the ARW format, for example, is strictly belonging to Sony, and say, for example, the CR2 extension is strictly belonging to Canon. There are applications that don't take those extensions but take DNG, so that's a consideration you might want to make. From here, below that, you have three options: all photos, new photos, or destination folders. These are just filters of how Lightroom is going to end up categorizing your images. If you select destination folders, for example, and select this little arrow here, it actually shows you the date that these images were taken. So if you have images that are on multiple dates, you can simply uncheck or check them if you want, and only import the images that you want. Using new photos will show you the selection for what Lightroom thinks is new to your catalog. So it'll actually go through your catalog and see if there are any duplicates. This is what this option here, don't import selected duplicates, is good for. If you select this, Lightroom will try and detect to see whether it's in the catalog already and not selected on import. Some other options we have down here are the grid view, which is what this is right now. We have Lupe view, which is just a single image view. Right here, this actual preview of this image isn't full quality, and so we can see that at 100%, this is the quality that Lightroom is presenting to us of that image, but the actual image is quite a lot bigger than this. We can also press G and E as shortcuts in order to toggle between those two views. And on the right here, we have file handling, file renaming, apply during import, and your destination. File handling is what Lightroom does with those images when it imports it. Specifically of import here is the build previews option. In the build previews option, basically Lightroom does what's called a preview file and generates preview files for every single one of your images when it gets imported. This is important because these different settings have different repercussions on how fast your preview experience is when you're using Lightroom and trying to sort through all of your images. Minimal makes the smallest preview in terms of size, and it's fast, but it doesn't give you good quality to preview from. Embedded and Sidecar is also fast to import, but it's temporary. It'll get your photos into the catalog quickly if you don't have that much time to import. And then when you're browsing the catalog, eventually it will try and rebuild previews for you. So it doesn't slow you down on import, but it slows you down when you're viewing them. Standard builds a preview based on your catalog settings, and you can find your catalog settings in the top left menu. Generally, the standard preview size is automatically set to the resolution of your monitor, but if you want it to be smaller or larger, you can definitely do that as well. The smaller the preview is, generally the faster your images will load, but you potentially will miss out on the quality when you're previewing them. So striking the right balance is a matter of experimentation. I personally just leave this as auto for Lightroom to try and resize it to my monitor's resolution. Preview quality here determines the fidelity of those images as well. And then we have automatically discard one-to-one previews, and then a bunch of different options for discarding them. One-to-one previews, which we'll find also here on the right, means that Lightroom will automatically try and build the exact resolution of your images, which usually takes the longest time, but gives you no lag when you try and zoom in. All of this will make a lot more sense as we go further into the course, but for now, we'll leave it as standard. Smart previews are Lightroom's version of high quality previews that can be used for both editing as well as previewing. This saves space and time, and it's also nice if you want to be able to edit on the go without being connected to the device that you're on. However, you won't get the 100% quality or the higher quality that you will of standard and one-to-one. For me, I have my build previews just as standard without doing smart previews. The next option we have is make a second copy to, and this just duplicates the import process into a different folder at the same time. From here, the next one is add to collection. We can actually add these images to a specified collection on import so that we don't have to do them afterwards. The next thing we have is file renaming, and this really varies depending on how you think you want to organize your Lightroom files and whatever is comfortable for you. There's a whole bunch of different methods we can use in order to rename our files on the way in. So if, say for example, we have file name -sequence, this is what our file name will look like. So it'll be DJI 0045-1-2-3 and so on. Usually for me, I actually just leave this off and I just import the file names as they are. Some other things we can do during the import process as well is that we can also apply different presets to the images on the import. This is useful if you have presets that you want to use on every single photo, but it also slows down the import process time as every single photo has to apply that developed setting when it gets imported. The next option we have here is metadata, and metadata is information that is baked into every single image and tells you details about how it was shot, whether or not there was copyright information, GPS information, and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is really useful if you want to add a copyright for all of your images, for example, or if you have any properties that are the same that you want to apply to every single one of your images. And then lastly here we have keywords. If you use keywords, we can add keywords here. And that will apply to every single one of the images on import. And the last option we have here is destination, which is where the images are going to go on the device that you decide to edit from. So in this case, it's on my hard drive and it'll be going to my pictures folder. Here we can organize a couple of options. Here we have by date, by original folders if we want, or all into one folder as well. I usually use by date and I use this numbering format, but you can use whatever format you like to use. I like to use by year and then the year, month, and then date. Once all of our settings are dialed in and we're ready to import, then we can press the import button down here on the bottom right. And up here in the top left bar, it will go through the process of importing our photos. And we can also click on the bar up here and we can see what Lightroom is doing at any one time. All right, so now that Lightroom is importing all of the files and going through the conversion process, I just wanted to mention that there is no right or wrong way to approach importing images in Lightroom because everyone has different needs. And so experiment with what works for you and what makes the most logical sense to you, and just keep to that over a consistent period of time and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then change it. There's so many different ways and different formats that you can use. For me personally, I always edit off drives. But this and all of the other settings that I showed in this lesson are the actual settings that I use on a day-to-day basis. Okay, now that Lightroom has gone through and finished importing all of our images, as we can see here, we have some images to fill up the spaces and the UI starts to look a little bit more full, so we can talk about it. So in this lesson, we'll go through every single UI piece in the screen and we'll get an understanding of how we can use them all. Let's start with the top toolbar here. This basically lets us know where we are in Lightroom itself. As I mentioned in the last module, in the introduction module, this course will only be covering the library and the develop tabs. So map, book, slideshow, print, and web will be excluded from this course as there are many other dedicated pieces of software that do much better jobs at creating books, creating slideshows, and preparing your images for print and web. On the left sidebar here, the very first thing we have is the navigator, which shows us a small preview of whatever image we have selected. We can change the scale of this by going 100%, and that automatically puts us into the Lupe mode that we had in the import screen. We can also go to maybe 400%, or we can change to any one of these denominations. Below that, we have the catalog and our folders. Our catalog and our folders tell us how many images we have and just a few details about where they're located. In this instance, the previous import that we did, where we imported all of these images, is here. And so that gets its own category. And then we can also go to all photographs and that will show us all of our images. These numbers will make a little bit more sense when we change the catalog to my catalog, where I have a whole bunch more and we can fill out this idea a little bit better. The folders are the folder structure of how we organize our images, and we'll get more into the folders and the collections side of things in the next lesson. For now, publish services is a way that we can export some of our images to specific services and software outside of Lightroom. So if you're looking to get into stock photos, for example, for Adobe Stock, you can set up an integration with that here. Below that, we have the import and export button. The import one we used before to get our images into Lightroom, and the export one we will cover in a later lesson. Through the middle here, we have the images that you can preview. On the top, we have the different filters that you can use to preview these images with. So say, for example, we wanted to view only the drone shots in this particular folder. What we can do here is we can say thumbnails, make everything small just so that we can see everything at a glance, because we can obviously see that there are drone shots here, then there are portraits here as well. We can go to metadata, and we can actually see which cameras these images were taken from if the metadata was imported as well. We can also see what lenses, what date, what labels, and all of these kind of neat little things. So in this instance, if we press this button, we can see that only these images are the drone shots, or if we press this button, only these images are shot with this particular camera or this particular camera. We can also do these filters by attributes as well. So Lightroom comes with all of these different methods to add attributes to your images so that you can then organize them correctly, and we'll go through those in the next lesson. If you want to search through text, we can do that here. So this is a search for any of the available metadata that belongs to any one of these images, and we can also select via keywords. Coming to the bottom of the middle section down here, we have a whole bunch of different options to be able to view our images. So as I mentioned earlier, right now we are in the grid view. Next to it is the Lupe view, which is just a view for a single image to be viewed. And then the next option we have here is compare, and this compares two images against one another. What we can do is zoom into both of these images at the same time and pan around. And especially if the images are the same size and these two images are not, we can actually compare an exact crop of both of those images. Down here, we can set the zoom level. And right now, both zooms are locked to be the same level, and we can unlock them, and we can see that the zoom level changes independently. We can sync them together again, and then press lock again, and there we have it. Next is survey. Survey is really good for selecting and picking out multiple images from a particular set of images. So going back to our grid view again, so say for example, we have this range of images. If we wanted to select the best pick from this, after pressing survey, it'll go into this mode. And say for example, we didn't like this one, and then we didn't like this one, or didn't like this one. And we can eventually whittle our way down to make our selects and potentially see which images we want to keep and which images we don't. The next option is people. So Lightroom will go and try and analyze your images and try to pick out the people in your particular catalog or in your folder so that you can then select them and those images for later use. The next option we have here is the paint option. So this is just Lightroom's quick way to be able to use all of these different attributes and add them quickly to any images. So if we say, for example, want to rate a bunch of different images as 4-star, we can go click, 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 and suddenly all of those images have those attributes. From there, we have A to Z, or we have the sort order, and we can sort by all of these different variables, and we can then reverse that sort order as well. On the right, we have the thumbnails slider, which we used before, and this basically just zooms in and zooms out. Over here on the right, we have the histogram. This is a very important piece of UI that is available on both the library module and the develop module, and this will have its own section in the editing fundamentals module when we cover that later. For now, we can see that if we select different images like this, the histogram changes. And again, we'll go through more in detail with the corresponding lesson. Directly below that, the original photo section here determines whether or not the image is actually being used as a smart preview or not. In this instance, it's not, it's just the original photo, which is why this says original photo here. We can build a smart preview here if we want to, but I typically don't use that for my own images. However, feel free to experiment for yourself. The next option we have here is quick develop. And this option gives us the ability to use some of the develop functions just really quickly in the library module. So say, for example, we wanted to add a quick preset to this particular image. So say that. We can see that over here in the navigator, it's changed from what it was previously, which is something around this, to this. If we open up the accordion here, we can go through and change any one of these presets if we want to. We can change some white balance to some pre-made options here, or even go custom if we so wish. We can then adjust for the tone and the exposure, the clarity, vibrance, and etc. if we wanted to do that. One particularly useful thing we can do here is pressing auto. So auto will automatically level out the exposure to what Lightroom thinks is the proper amount of exposure for this image. And this means we can do really neat things such as selecting a bunch of different images and pressing auto on all of them. And all of these images will have their exposure automatically updated. The next two options we have here are keywording and keyword list. These are two methods for organization, which we will cover in the next lesson on image organization. Okay, so the next option we have here is metadata. And metadata is, as I explained in the last lesson, information about your image. Over here on the left, in this dropdown, we have all these different views depending on the sets of information you want to see. So in this case, if I go to EXIF data, for example, EXIF data is probably your most common and interesting set of information for most photographers. So it gives you information about what size the image is, what date it was shot, and then all of the metadata associated with the actual shooting of that particular image. In this data set, it also shows you things like GPS locations and coordinates, which can be interesting as well. So if we come back to default, we can actually go into each one of these fields and edit these pieces of metadata as we see fit. So in this instance, I've got my copyright details and my creator details here, and you might wish to do that as well. There's a lot of different options and a lot of different functions and customizability we have here. And the last thing on the bottom right here, if we have multiple images and they all have varying metadata, we can actually sync them all together. We can add whatever pieces of metadata we want here and then press the synchronize button, and then all of the metadata will become synchronized together. This toggle on the left here is to automatically sync any selected images. And then on the right here, we have synchronizing settings for the develop module. And we will go into more detail about this in the editing fundamentals section. Down here on the bottom, we have the film strip of all of the images. So this is just another view of this main central area. Over here above that, we have what is on this current monitor, which we can display which view we are currently using. This second monitor is available if we want to have a preview on our second monitor. This button here is the same as pressing the grid view here. Now over here on the right, we have different filters, and these are very similar to just shortcuts on metadata. So when I say, for example, select camera info, it will bring up the metadata and then all of the focal lengths that were used in this particular catalog. Now, all of these panels, this top one, this right one, bottom, and left, you may have noticed that there are little arrows on the sides here, and those basically hide and show the relevant panels, like so that you can have this kind of view. If you want to have a quick way to do this via keyboard, you can press Shift and Tab, and that will toggle all of the collapsible panels around the main area on and off. Alternatively, we can just press Tab and that just removes the left and right panels. Like so. All right, in this lesson, we will go through how to organize and categorize all of your images in Lightroom. So as I mentioned in previous lessons, there are so many ways to organize all of your images, and it is really a matter of trial and error, of experimentation and understanding the different methods to find out what works for you and what you like best and what resonates with your style of photography. So while I'll be going through all of the different methods of how to categorize your images, I will also be showing you how I personally categorize my images and what makes sense to me as well, so that you guys can have a little bit of an idea of an approach that you can use as well. All right, let's start with a quick overview of all of the different methods that we can organize files in Lightroom with. So over here on the left, again, we have all of the different catalog options. We also have this quick collection option, which is super interesting as well, which we'll cover in a moment. We also have all of the folders, which we can organize our structure with. We then also have all of these smart collections that we can also categorize our images with as well. All of these currently correspond to the attributes. So all of these pieces of attribution we can use as well. Things like flagging and things like rating and things like colors. We also have on the right keywords and keyword lists and a whole bunch of different methods to be able to sort, find, and filter our images with. Let's start with the basics, folder structure. So when it comes to folders, what I typically do is, whilst this date is useful for us to be able to recall when we took these photos, we can also make it a little bit more intuitive to understand which folder and what we did in that day as well. So we can also right click here and go rename. What I typically like to do is rename the folder to include some information about what happened on that day. So in this instance, I might say Lake Kawaguchi with Georgia. And now we have a little bit more information to work with. And this really helps later on when we have lots of folders and lots of different occasions where we've gone out shooting. Now, obviously, there are many ways to do this, and you can pick one method that works for you the best, but this method works for me pretty well. One of the main methods you will find yourself using the most are these smart collections and quick collections. So with this, say for example, we wanted to quickly group some selects together. If we just simply press the B key on the keyboard, we can add them to our quick collection. So when we have the quick collection setting up here, it automatically gets moved into this folder. And so we can quickly select, we can say, look at this image, press B. Maybe we want, let's say, this image, and maybe we want this image. Then we can go back into the quick collection and they are all there. Super useful. Some other options we can use are more related to the keyboard shortcuts that you have on your keyboard. So if we just make this a little bit bigger just for the example, if we select an image and we press the number 1 to 5 on the keyboard, we can say 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, and so on. But the interesting thing here is that if an image is 5 star, we can actually create a collection here, which this particular folder has been made by default, but we can say 5 stars and this image will automatically be in that folder, which is super useful. Typically what I do is I actually go ahead and select this particular smart collections folder, and I'll go create a smart collection. And now we are in the option to create a smart collection within the smart collection set. So we can say 1 star, and we can go if the rating is greater than or equal to, or we can say is, in this instance, we can go 1 star. So if the rating is 1 star, then we will create this category. So coming back to our images, if we say this image and press the 1 on the keyboard is 1 star, then automatically it will be in this folder. Very convenient. One other thing we can do if we go past the numbers 1 to 5 on our keyboard is we can actually go 6, 7, 8, and 9. And as we can see there, we have changed the colors that are associated with this particular photo as well. So colors are also a great way for us to be able to filter and categorize between different images. And these colors can be whatever you want them to be. If you are working on a particular project, maybe you give it the yellow color. Or if you are working on client work only, maybe your client work is green. Or perhaps you only want to select photos for Instagram and you want the red color to be Instagram. Again, what we can do is here, the default has a colored red smart collection already for us. But again, we can come to here, go create smart collection, and we can go colored blue. And we can go label color is blue. And that will then, again, create our smart folder for us. And then we can go back into our folder and we can select blue. And again, our image is there. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can use smart collections and just collections in general to be able to categorize our work. And in a little bit, I'll go through my own personal library and we will have a look at how I decide to utilize smart collections and collections in general. One thing I wanted to mention here, I don't personally use this, but you can actually use the keywording function as well, which for some people is super handy. So say for example, I have this image, it's an image of Mount Fuji and it is a mountain. So I'm going to write mountain here. And once this keyword is in the system, like that, what we can do is we can set all of these images to have this keyword of mountain. So if we press mountain after we selected all of these images, we now have all of these images have mountain on them. From here, one of the things we can do is if we press Command or Alt F, it will bring up this text field and we can say mountain. And will only show us the images that have that particular keyword. And so when you're doing a search in your entire catalog, this can become really quick and a really nice way to be able to filter through a lot of different images if you are keeping your keywords really up to date. Again, I don't personally use this myself, but it is an option for you if you would like to. All right, so now let's look at my own personal catalog and I'll show you guys how I categorize all of my images. So what you'll notice here is that in this catalog, there is 188,000 different images. And we have a whole bunch of different parameters for this particular catalog. Now with this catalog, I don't have every single one of my images. I do delete duplicates or images that I definitely won't edit. And I do a bit of filtering when I'm importing the images as well. So these are all images that I would probably want to keep or want to edit in the future. So when it comes to my folder structure, I personally just use one big volume for everything. In this instance, I have my volume called Big Boy. And I have them categorized by year. So every single year, as you can see here, has a whole bunch of different images within them. And as I mentioned before, each one of these folders have a little bit of a description for what I was doing or where I was on that day, just so I can quickly pick up the context to what that particular folder is. Now, below that in the collections, again, the way that I organize my smart collections is again in stars. So I organize them in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then red and yellow are the two colors that I used. We can also use a flagged smart collection, which if you press the tilde key, you can automatically flag and pick a image. So you'll get this flagging option up here. Typically between quick collections, flagging, red and yellow, these options are enough for me for any different amount of projects that I might have going on at any one time. One thing I will point out at this point though is if you right click an image and you go to view options down here, you can actually turn on a whole bunch of different options for the actual cells of each image so that it shows you more information when you are viewing things. So for me, for example, I have my flags in the top left. I have rotation down here as well. And then for you to be able to see what stars each image has. Feel free to play around with all the library view options that make sense to you. One thing I'll mention that's really powerful that you can do is if you create a collection, and we can call this example, in this folder, if we say, for example, drag one of these into there, we can actually sync this folder with Lightroom across both Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Cloud. So this might be a really good tool for you if, say, for example, you have portfolio pieces, or you have prints, or you have images that you want to edit on the road. You can actually sync your images ahead of time so that you can edit on the go as well. And that's kind of it for how I personally organize my images in Lightroom. It's very simple and I like to keep it simple, but it's powerful enough for me to be able to find anything at any given time for any given project. So just to recap, for me personally, all I use is the renaming of my folders and some of the smart collections that are tied to the keyboard shortcuts. That's kind of all you need, and that's all I use. But of course, again, make sure that you are experimenting with the methods that work for you and resonate with you the most. I know a lot of people, a lot of photographers use the keywording functions. I don't personally use it, but that might work for you as well. So feel free to experiment